You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 295, the realistic trap that's keeping you from your bigger and better life. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, Bravehearts. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited for this week's podcast episode because we are kicking off a 3-part series. Each week, I'm going to be deep diving with you into one of the 3 mindset shifts that helps you get over your ex and build a life that's bigger and better than the one that you had with your ex. It's all about breaking through, shattering through your invisible ceiling, which I talked about in a couple episodes back. But I wanted to really just give each mindset shift its own episode to really dive deep in as I'm doing this work inside of the Bigger and Better Life Mastermind. So here's what I'm seeing happen constantly, okay? Whether you're fresh from heartbreak or you've done the breakup work, maybe you're not crying over your ex anymore. You might even be dating again, but you're still making decisions based on what feels realistic instead of what's actually possible. And this realistic filter is super sneaky, my friends, because it sounds so like reasonable, so mature, so responsible. And I feel like currently as a society, we're in a phase of responsible, especially in America right now with everything that's going on. I feel like everyone has retired from the kind of just fuck it moments that we had during COVID. And we are very much looking at, we don't know what's going to go on. Let's be responsible. Let's make more responsible decisions. Instead of during COVID, we were kind of all in this energy of like, blow it up and let's figure it out, which was super fun, by the way. I am all about that vibe. So here's the truth though. What feels realistic to you right now is literally just a reflection of your past conditioning, not your future potential. And I want you to take a moment and think about it. When you were planning this life with your ex, did you limit yourself to what was realistic? I don't know the answer to that. Some of you, it might be a hell no. Some of you might have like dreamed really big with your ex. You planned adventures, you imagined your dream home, you talked about these wild career changes. Or maybe you were like me, where your ex was a very quote unquote realistic kind of person and you made quote unquote realistic decisions together, but secretly in your mind, you had all of these really big, huge life plans for them. Okay. For us, right? But somewhere along the way, maybe during the relationship or definitely during the breakup, you started playing it safe. You started asking what's realistic instead of what's possible. And that question is keeping you trapped in a life that feels probably fine, but not extraordinary. So let's talk about this from a perspective. I want you to witness this outside of yourself. So let's just take a moment. Imagine that you're at a coffee shop and you overhear 2 women talking. And one says, I've always wanted to start a consulting business, but that's not really realistic for someone with my background. And the other says, I've always wanted to start a consulting business, but what would that look like? Same desire, completely different questions, and those questions will lead to completely different lives. What? The first mindset shift that changes everything in your world right now is moving from what is realistic to what is possible. Because here's what I need you to understand. The question you ask will determine the kind of answers you get. When you ask what's realistic, your brain might scan for all of the evidence of limitations. It looks at your past, your current circumstances, what you see other people doing. It finds all the reasons why something won't work. When you ask what is possible, or perhaps what is potentially possible, your brain starts looking for opportunities. It gets kind of creative. It stops focusing on obstacles and starts seeing solutions. Think about someone who's thinking about moving to a new city. If they ask, is this realistic? The brain will immediately go to, I don't have enough money saved. I don't know anyone there. What if I can't find a job? What if I can't find a lease? What about my current lease? Versus, what if they asked, what is possible? Not what's realistic, but what's possible when I'm thinking about moving to a new city. Their brain starts thinking, I could research remote work options. I could join networking groups online before I move. I could sublease my apartment. I could start with a short-term rental to test it out. Same situation, very different mental pathways, right? The realistic question keeps you in your current reality. I feel like the possibility question opens up new realities. Again, imagine two women, both recently single, both wanting to make changes in their lives. Woman A sits down to plan her next year and asks, what's realistic for me? She looks at her current salary and thinks, I can probably afford a slightly nicer apartment. She looks at her dating history and thinks I should probably lower my standards a bit. She looks at her career and thinks maybe I can get a small promotion if I work really hard. Those are all very realistic, mature, responsible examples, versus woman B, who sits down to plan her next year and asks, what's possible for me? What's possible in this year of me being newly single? And she thinks, what if I could double my income this year? How would that change where I live? She thinks, what kind of relationship would make me excited to wake up every day? She thinks, what if I could create work that doesn't feel like work? Both women have the same starting point. Both women have the same exact, stuff leading up to it, but woman B's questions are going to lead her brain toward a completely different solution, completely different opportunities, creative possibilities that woman A will not see if she's looking at what's realistic, right? By the end of the year, they're going to be living completely different lives, not because their circumstances were different, but because their questions were different. What? So, Bravehearts, here is your mini challenge for this week. Each week, as we do this mini 3-part series, you're going to have a challenge. Okay. So, this week's challenge is called the Possibility Audit. Step 1, I want you to write down one area of your life where you've been playing it realistic. Just one area. Maybe it's your career, your living situation, your dating life, your health goals, whatever it is, just pick one. Step 2, I want you to ask yourself, if I removed the word realistic from my vocabulary, what would I want in this area? What is possible in this area? Don't edit yourself. Don't worry about how. Just write down what you actually want. And step 3, here's the most powerful part. Ask yourself, what's one small step that I could take this week that moves me toward what's possible instead of what's realistic? Maybe it's researching that career change you've been putting off. Maybe it's looking at apartments in the neighborhood you can't afford. Maybe it's downloading that dating app, but writing a profile that reflects who you're becoming and not who you were. The goal isn't to change your whole life this week. The goal is to start asking a different question and taking one small action from that new perspective. Because the biggest thing that keeps people asking what's realistic instead of what's possible is that they're still carrying invisible baggage from their past relationships. Isn't that crazy? Not because they want their ex back, but because breakups don't just end relationships. They reveal the limiting beliefs that you were carrying all along before you ever even met your ex. And this is exactly why the Get Over Your Ex program isn't just about getting over someone. It's about getting over the version of yourself that's settled for less than what's possible. It's the foundation for building the bigger and better life that you actually want. Because you can't build what's possible on a foundation of old, retired limitations. So this week, try the possibility audit. Notice what comes up. Notice the resistance, because there will be resistance, and notice how your brain wants to snap back to what's realistic. And listen, the resistance, that's just your invisible ceiling. And next week, we're going to talk about the second mindset shift that shatters it completely. Okay. So we're going to be moving from I need to be ready to I need to begin. And Spoiler alert, no one ever feels ready for what's possible. They just start anyways. But we're going to deep dive on that mindset shift next week to really help the momentum continue. All right. Remember, what's possible for you is always bigger than what feels realistic right now. All right. I love you, my brave hearts, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.